I'm ready.
All right, people out there, we are live from coast to coast. If you're tuned in live, you may have noticed that we're a little bit late. We were having some technical issues, but I think I finally figured them out. Wow, I had a whole, I had everything planned what I wanted to say, and now through all these technical issues, I totally forgot. Say what's up to the people, Dad.
Thank you so much for persisting. We'll try to make it worth your while.
Yes.
This show is extremely important
Why, Dad? Tell us why.
because it goes to the heart of the corruption of the presidency.
Oh,
So, for years now, Republicans have tried to pin some kind of corruption on Joe Biden, claiming somehow he personally benefited from his son Hunter Biden's business dealings with foreign governments, especially China, even though that took place when Joe Biden wasn't even in office as vice president, much less as president. And they haven't come up with a thing, not a single document to link Joe Biden to any corrupt money from foreign governments.
wait, you're jumping
However,
the gun. I haven't even given it an intro yet.
oh,
I wanted to say
sorry about that.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I wanted to first say Happy New Year to everybody. There's a lot of people in the chat saying hello, like Jamie Smith, Cooper Shelby, Valander, Pama Jama, Linda Fusco, Paul Folo. I just wanted to say hello to everybody, Dad.
Well, that's a very good idea before I start running my mouth.
Okay, now go ahead.
Go ahead. So, Republicans have spent years trying to pin some kind of illicit foreign money on Joe Biden, and they've come up entirely empty. Even their own witnesses, their expert witnesses that they called, said there's no basis here for impeachment. And since that time, absolutely nothing new has emerged. But what has emerged is Trump, while he was president, in violation of the emoluments clause of the Constitution, which I'll talk about in a moment, has been the recipient of considerable amounts of foreign money pouring into Trump properties. Now, I forecasted this way back in 2017 when I wrote my book, The Case for Impeachment. I said Trump needs to do what Ronald Reagan did, divest from his holdings and put them into a blind trust. So no one will know what they could do to financially benefit Donald Trump, and Donald Trump wouldn't have any control over the business. He didn't do that, contrary to my advice. Big surprise,
Big
right?
surprise.
Uh, Big surprise. Instead, he kept all of his interests and all of his companies and had his sons run them. And the House Democrats documented $7.8 million just in the first 2 years of the Trump presidency, pouring into Trump properties. The vast amount of it coming from where, Sam?
China.
China, 5.5 million of the 7.8, and almost all of it coming from dictatorial regimes like Saudi Arabia or Kuwait, almost none of it coming from democratic nations. Now, this is just the tip of the iceberg because they were only able to get very limited information because the Republicans who care so much about Hunter Biden care nothing about what the president himself did with respect to profiting from his office and blocked access to the records. So the amount is actually many, many times more than the 7.8 million they've uncovered thus far. Now, what is the emoluments clause of the Constitution,
I don't know.
which I wrote about in my 2017 book, The Case for Impeachment, and then again in my 2021 book, 13 Cracks, in which I actually documented a lot of these foreign payments even before the House Democrats did it. The emoluments clause is very specific. It says that a president, unless he gets specific authorization from Congress, cannot take anything of value from a foreign government or their entities. He cannot profit in any way from foreign governments. There's also a domestic emoluments clause, basically saying the only profit the president can have, the only money he can receive is his salary. So Donald Trump is clearly in violation of the emoluments clause of the Constitution, although the Supreme Court punted on that issue. It came to the Supreme Court after Donald Trump had left office and said, we're not going to consider it because it is moot. I find it the height of irony that conservatives who twisted themselves into pretzels to overturn more than 200 years of precedent and claim that the Second Amendment establishes an individual right to keep and bear arms, totally untied to the first clause to maintain a well-regulated militia. They have just mangled original intent, and yet now they've done just the opposite with the emoluments clause, and by the way, also with the third section of the 14th Amendment, which says if you had held office and taken an oath to protect the Constitution, you can't hold office again. So right now, the only scandal with actual receipts, actual documentation, pertains not to Joe Biden, but to Donald Trump, who now wants to be president again. And by the way, Donald Trump himself essentially acknowledged that he benefited financially from his presidency. He boasted that he put forth a presidential premium of 15% on his net worth.
But that's my question. So this is pretty brand new news, right? And I didn't even hear
Yes
about
and
it.
no. As I said,
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Much of it in my 2021 book, 13 Cracks. They have much more information, but basically I outlined the same thing.
Right, but my point is, why is this even news? We knew that he had these hotels going. We knew that he had foreign entities staying at them. This seems sort of like same old, no?
Yes and no. Here's the problem. Donald Trump has been corrupt in so many ways, not just personally profiting from the presidency, violating the emoluments clause of the Constitution, violating the 14th Amendment, undermining our democracy, undermining our national security. We become almost inert, almost, resistant to Trump scandals. Had this been any other president, it would have been the crime of the century. But it's just Donald Trump,
Right.
we don't care. It's another thing. Why is this important? Number one, it occurs simultaneously with the Republicans trying to fabricate a similar story about Joe Biden that holds no water. Secondly, it comes at the very beginning of an election year when Donald Trump is trying to once again gain the presidency and obviously profit from it again. And three, while I did document a lot of this in my book, this 156-page report nails it down in great detail because despite Republicans trying to block it, they obtained specific information from Mazars with the accounting firm for Donald Trump. So they actually have the receipts for all of these payments. And as they point out, this is but the tip of the iceberg. The actual monies that Donald Trump received are many, many times larger.
So I didn't even read the article yet. So the article is saying that the House Democrats released documents that showed that his hotels and properties were being stayed at by foreign entities, correct? Am I following that correctly?
Any foreign entities. If it had kind of been spread around, just normal kind of doing business, one could understand it. Maybe it would still violate the emoluments clause. He should have divested and put it in a blind trust, like the Republican conservative icon Ronald Reagan did. They all model themselves on Reagan until they don't. So it's not just random. It is overwhelmingly China. And as I said, overwhelmingly non-democratic nations. The second largest contributor to Trump is Saudi Arabia. And we all know that Saudi Arabia gave Jared Kushner Donald Trump's son-in-law management of $2 billion, not million, $2 billion in asset with an annual fee for managing it of 25 million, even though he is a real estate developer. He has no experience
No,
managing
right. I
money.
mean,
And of course, Republicans have made a big thing about Hunter Biden, say he's getting this money from foreign entities, even though he doesn't have experience in the
yeah,
fields he's dealing with.
right. We've heard that all 1,000 times before, Dad. Come on.
But now it's nailed down, and
But
it's the election year, and it just shows how thin the case against Joe Biden is, and the real case is against Donald Trump.
But so what now? I mean, I always say this. I mean, it's like, okay, all these things happen to Trump, but he's the Teflon Don. He just keeps going. So there's another New York Times article, maybe a little bit more explicitly saying that he got money from his properties. But what now? I mean, is anything going to happen? Is anything going to change because of this?
No, we just don't know. At some point, I believe there's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Yes, he's Teflon. Yes, all, scandals, 120 of which would have sunk any other politician, doesn't seem to sink Donald Trump. But it's just one thing after another, and we just don't know when the straw is going to break the camel's back. So
Yeah,
it's important. We can't devalue scandals just because Donald Trump has so many scandals. We can't say, oh, it doesn't matter. We shouldn't consider it. That's just wrong. That plays right into Donald Trump's hands.
yeah. I guess I'm not saying we shouldn't consider it. It's just another Donald Trump headline
But
that's
it can't be
important.
just. That's what I'm trying to argue. These are very significant violations of the Constitution, of his oath of office, of his uh, running American foreign and military policy. We don't know the ways in which Donald Trump's profiting from foreign governments have affected his decision making, because virtually everything about the Donald Trump presidency is non-transparent.
Right. I guess I'm not saying
So we
it's
do know
not
what happened with the Saudis and his son-in-law. He also had $100 billion arms sale to the
right.
Saudis.
But Dad, we've heard that a trillion times. I mean, I'm not saying it's not important or these things aren't important. It's just that nothing seems to stick.
Well, we don't know that.
All right.
So far, that's true. As I said, we don't know when the last straw that's going to break the camel's back will be. And just because Donald Trump is a multiple offender doesn't mean we should dismiss the latest offense.
I
That would be
agree.
wrong.
I agree.
That would devalue American democracy and American law, and we should not allow that to happen.
I agree. I agree. I just hope it actually happens because so far
Well,
it's
we'll see.
never happened. Yeah.
We don't know yet. It just report just came out,
Yeah.
story, today, but it's been covered extensively.
Um,
All right, let's see what our audience has to say. I hope they all didn't leave us.
no, we've got 150 people watching right now. So
Awesome. Thank you for
yeah, thank you.
hanging through our technical difficulties.
Yeah.
As I said, we run a shoestring operation. We need your support.
Let me get to some of the early on super chats. So Dr. Ash Zarian says, "Hi, Dr. Lichtman. Hi, Sam. Hey, doctor. He asks, can you discuss the 13 keys with respect to the controversial president election of 2000? We've actually talked about that a lot, Dr. Ash. I'd
We've talked about that half a
recommend
dozen
you going
times.
to one of our past episodes. David Pat Queen with a $20 donation. Thank you so much. Sean P with a donation says, do you think Texas will ever be blue/purple?
Do I think what?
Do you think Texas will ever be blue/purple?
That's a great question. I've been doing a lot of work on civil rights in Texas for many decades. And as long as I've been involved with it, uh, certain pundits and politicians have been saying, not that Texas will turn blue, but at least that Texas will turn purple, particularly when you get a greater turnout from Hispanic voters. I'm still waiting for that to happen. Every statewide elected official in Texas is still a Republican. Republicans control overwhelmingly the congressional delegation, both whether Texas is going to turn purple anytime soon.
We have a $5 donation from Dominique Pan. And then
Thank
Mike
you.
DeNicola with a $10 donation says, "Hey, Alan and Sam, I sadly have bronchitis. Oh no, so I'll make this short.
Oh no, sorry to hear that.
Do you think any of James Biden's and James's aides' subpoenas will reveal anything impeachable in the GOP's inquiry?"
You know, the GOP has been looking into Disraeli once said, finality is not a word. Final never, but it's about as close as you get to final never, that beyond their fabrications, the Republicans will continue to come up empty when it comes to substantive investigations of Joe Biden. Joe Biden's a Boy Scout. You know, there are a lot of criticisms you can have of Joe Biden, but one of the most inapt, absurd criticisms is that he's corrupt like Donald Trump. Donald Trump is 100 times more corrupt than Joe Biden, as proven by the evidence.
Sorry, folks. I think we had a little bit of a technical difficulty, but we're back. Marcellus Wallace, like the character from Pulp Fiction, they ask, "Hey, doctor, my friend and I have been debating the keys for the 1992 election. Was Perot the sole factor for Bush's loss in 1992?
Great question. Perot was the sixth and fatal key. Without the Perot campaign, it would have been 5 keys down, and George H.W. Bush would have been a predicted winner. So Ross Perot did affect fundamentally the history of the United States. And he garnered 19% of the popular vote, second only to, do you know who was number one third party candidate?
Of all time?
All time.
Um,
Theodore Roosevelt,
you didn't
former
give me.
president.
You didn't give me time to answer.
Froggy buzzed you, sorry.
Who is Froggy? I don't even know who Froggy is.
He got 27%. But Perot sunk H.W. Bush. And after the election, but Perot was, one of these nutty, eccentric billionaires. His campaign song was Crazy, which kind of fit extremely well. But after the campaign, he reached out to me and said, I want you to write my biography. And I said, sure, be happy to do it. And then just as he dropped out of the campaign, then dropped back in, a few months later, he said, sorry, changed my mind. You're not going to do it.
Why do you think he changed it? What do you think made him change his mind?
For an eccentric guy like that, who knows?
Yeah. President Belichick says, I think RFK falls off by the fall. What do you think, Dad?
It's hard to know at this point. Typically, yes. Typically, third-party candidates tend to flash and then to decline. At one point in the election year of 1992, Ross Perot actually outpolled both H.W. Bush and Clinton, the only third-party or independent candidate ever to do that. Then, of course, substantially faded by the time we get to election day. Now, the one big thing RFK has going for him is not anything rational or any policy. He's a anti-science, anti-vaccine candidate. His name, and who knows, how far his name might carry him.
Not very far if you ask me, Sam.
You're probably right, but well, it's too early to judge.
Stephen G wants to know if Biden gets impeached by the House of Representatives, does that mean he technically loses the scandal key?
Typically, yes. But if you read my book, Predicting the Next President, The Keys to the White House 2020, you'll see that there has to be bipartisan recognition of scandal. Even though, for example, Bill Clinton was impeached on close to party line vote, Democrats recognized that there was a really nasty scandal involving Bill Clinton and the young intern Monica Lewinsky. They just didn't think it was impeachable. So if it's just Republicans in the House trying to monger a scandal and there's no broad recognition, then no. And in fact, uh, if they're really pursuing a purely partisan impeachment vote with no substance, that actually could benefit Biden and hurt the Republicans.
What prevents Teddy Roosevelt from being considered on the same tier as Washington, Lincoln, and FDR?
Uh, well, each of them did something truly extraordinary. Washington, of course, held the nation together. It was if there ever was an indispensable person, it was Washington. Held the nation together when there was very little prospect that, in fact, the nation would hold. Lincoln, of course, led us through the Civil War, uh, through the end of slavery. Franklin Roosevelt led us through the Great Depression and the worst war in history. Teddy Roosevelt was an extraordinary, charismatic president who did some excellent things, but nothing that quite matched what the three top presidents did. He's just a notch below.
Right. Tim Lawrence with their first super chat. Thank you, Tim. They say, which election were you able to predict the earliest? And what were some of the critical keys that helped you make an early call?
Which election?
They're asking, which one did you call the earliest?
Oh, probably the two I called the earliest were my first call of Ronald Reagan's reelection, which I called in 1982 in April, early in the year, 2.5 years before the election. And the reason I was able to call it so early is although the economy was in recession, I anticipated the economy would recover. It would not be in recession during the election year, and the long-term economy would fall in Reagan's favor. I saw major policy change as compared to the Carter administration, a charismatic candidate, no big foreign policy failures, no enormous social unrest. So I was able to call that very early. Then, contrarily, I also called the 2008 election 2.5 years ahead of time because I foresaw things going so badly for Bush's second term. In fact, I became infamous for saying the Democrats could pick a name out of the phone book and still defeat the Republicans in the open seat in 2008 when you didn't have the incumbency key either. And that's kind of what they did. Whoever heard of Barack Obama, a few years before he won the 2008 nomination. Then the call I'm probably most proud of is I called the very hard to call 2012 election when a lot of the pundits and the pollsters, even right before the election, were calling Mitt Romney. I called that in 2010 for Barack Obama. And then I got this 30-page attack from Nate Silver, the compiler of polls, saying, you can't do this. It's too early. And of course, being a professor, I wrote a 30-page response, which boiled down to saying, you can't do it because you rely on polls which have no value this early, but I can do it because my system mirrors the structure of how elections really work.
Got him. Got him. Nate Silver, he got you, dog. Right, Dad?
And Nate Silver, by the way, has been bounced from 538. He's no longer relevant to political prediction.
I say bounce
and
him.
I
say keep bouncing
bye-bye.
him. Bye-bye. Toodaloo. Nick wants to know, do you think Florida is fully Republican now?
It's pretty Republican. I wouldn't say, it's another Texas, but it's going to be very difficult for Democrats to win in Florida. And of course, like so many other states, they've got to overcome Republican gerrymanders, even though there is a constitutional anti-gerrymandering provision and also a provision saying you can't undermine minority opportunities. Republicans have overridden that, and the courts are all Republican appointed judges, and they've rubber stamped the gerrymanders.
Addy Mart wants to know, is there a chance the third party key will cancel out?
That's a really good question again. And if you read my book, you'll see typically the third party key counts against the White House party, except in the extraordinary situation, which almost never happens, that the third party is a clear split within the opposition. So if Donald Trump, for some reason, loses or gets denied the Republican nomination and is able to run as an independent candidate, that would not count against the incumbent Democrats. Uh, RFK Jr. is a tougher case, but until I see, as I said, he may not turn the key anyway, but until I see clear evidence that he represents a Republican split, if he polls high enough as we get closer, then he would count against the White House party.
Sean P. asks, polarization is not unprecedented. How long do you think this period of extreme polarization will last? What will it take to pull us out of it?
That is another very tough question. And you're right. We've had, pretty severe polarization before. We've had a civil war that resulted from the polarization over slavery. Unfortunately, until there is some major change within the Republican Party, that it's no longer a Trumpian party. And I don't see that happening anytime soon. The polarization is going to last. But maybe once Trump is no longer on the scene, the extreme elements within the Republican Party won't have a face to advance their agenda and advance their politics, and maybe you'll get a bit of a move back to the center. But
Blake,
don't bet on it.
maybe I will bet on it. How
You're
about
not betting on it, Sam.
I might.
Oh, okay.
Haha.
Haha.
Blake Gershom asks, while abortion remains both Biden's Harris's secret weapon this election cycle, especially in light of the recent Texas ban, immigration is their Achilles heel. How do you foresee this affecting the keys?
Not at all. Issues don't affect the keys. In fact, looking at issues has a negative predictive value. For example, when Ronald Reagan won almost every state and 60% of the vote in 1984, his opponent, Walter Mondale, was actually ahead on a lot of the issues. So there is no way of looking at individual issues and using that as a predictive base for the result of a presidential election. That's why the keys do not gauge issues, they gauge governance.
Tell them, Dad.
Now, that doesn't mean at other levels, congressional, state house elections, abortion or immigration won't play a role. I think they will, along with democracy. But the keys show that presidential elections are unique, and things that affect elections at other levels do not impact presidential elections.
Paul Folo says, Lichtman, you trying to tie the...
Wait a minute, which Lichtman?
You.
Oh.
You trying to tie the Second Amendment to slavery is very unfair. The vast majority of slave rebellions happened after the ratification, and all the major revolts happened much later. This is in reference to you saying the Second Amendment was written not for everybody to bear arms because they wouldn't have given guns to slaves.
No, I didn't say that.
Well, what do you have to say to Paul? What do you have to say to Paul?
Yeah, I'll say exactly what I said. If, in fact, the Second Amendment was not tied to a well-regulated militia, but was designed to guarantee the right to keep and bear arms to all persons, then you wouldn't have had a slaveholder framing it. You wouldn't have had slaveholders voting for it. You wouldn't have slaveholders voting to ratify it. Why? Not because they thought arms would be given to the slaves who had no rights and were not considered persons, but because it would give arms to free blacks, many thousands of free blacks, some of whom were former slaves. Slaveholders would never consider arming free blacks, but by tying it to a well-regulated militia, you kept it out of the hands of free blacks because no black persons were allowed to join the militia. They were not allowed to join the militia until, 70 some odd years later during the Civil War.
The Alex Treefire asks, what are your thoughts on a judge recently ruling to keep Trump on the ballot in Virginia?
I think that's the wrong ruling. I'm not a lawyer, but I've been an expert in 110 civil rights cases. As I said, conservatives have tied themselves into pretzels, trying to overcome over 200 years of precedent, which tied the right to keep bear arms to a well-regulated militia. And I've not been an outlier on that. It was only when the NRA launched a reconsideration, distorted reconsideration of the Second Amendment, that somehow, conservatives on the court latched onto that, and I think mistakenly said the Second Amendment was designed to protect individual right to keep and bear arms. So I think, the conservatives twisted themselves into pretzels to give that interpretation, but seem absolutely unwilling to deal with the plain language of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. It's not unclear. Or, these originalists, if you look at the original debates in the Congress, whether it covered the president or not, didn't come up much. But when it came up, the answer was, of course it does. It covers civil and military officers, of which the president is certainly. And it was designed not just for ex-Confederates, could have done that by statute, but designed in perpetuity to protect the Republic from insurrections. But again, I'm not a lawyer, so take my opinion for what it's worth.
RBC asks, if the economy isn't in a recession by May, would that make the economy keys true?
It would almost certainly make the long-term economy key true, because the long-term economy has been so strong under Biden. It would take an early and very deep recession to turn that around, and would certainly augur very well for the short-term economy key, although it's still possible in June or July, the economy could crash into recession, but very unlikely if it hasn't done so by mid-year.
Who would have won the keys in the election of 1976, Jimmy Carter versus Gerald Ford, or 1980, Carter versus Reagan?
In 1976, Jimmy Carter won the keys. This is all in my book. And in 1980, Jimmy Carter overwhelmingly lost the keys, leading to Ronald Reagan's big win.
R. Shelton asks, it might be a hard thing to imagine now, but what would it take for the keys to become obsolete? I hope they don't.
Yeah, I've been actually somewhat amazed that the keys have had a 40-year run. As I said, they're based on history, and there can be huge events that change history. So far, that hasn't happened. And to a great extent, that's because the keys are a very robust system, as I said, retrospectively going back to 1860 and prospectively going back to 1984. But it would be the height of hubris to say the keys will last forever. May well outlast me, Sam, and then you gotta become the keeper of the keys.
I don't know anything.
You know a lot.
Jordan Marchev asks, when you went on Bill Maher, why did you say that Democrats don't have a spine?
I'm trying to remember. I think at that time, they were not strongly enough in going against Donald Trump and all of the misdeeds of the Trump administration. They've gotten stronger since then, but that's my recollection when I was on Bill Maher several years ago.
Elemental Bot asks, what key is affected by people staying home, like in 1986, 2016, and maybe 24?
Well, there is no key on turnout. Again, you can't predict in advance what turnout's going to be and who it might help. and who it would hurt. But when you have a situation when the keys strongly go against either the incumbent party or the challenging party, that is correlated with, although not perfectly predictive of turnout. So turnout is more a consequence rather than a cause.
Ross Goldberg says Dem political scientist Rai Texera has said that the Democratic Party has been losing voters of color and the working class because the party has moved too far to the left. Do you agree? Culturally, too far to the left culturally. Do you agree?
I think there is some truth to that. I have yet to see major erosion of voters of color in presidential elections. In other elections, the overwhelming majority of elected officials who are persons of color are Democratic. But I do think, not even so much because Democrats have moved so far to the left, but because Republican messaging on the culture wars has been much stronger, more repeated, and more effective than Democratic messaging. For example, the attacks on Claudine Gay, the former president of Harvard who had to resign. Certainly a lot of legitimacy in those attacks, but who initiated it? Christopher Rufo, who is not an academic, he's a Republican activist who has committed vastly greater sins of intellectual integrity than Claudine Gay. He virtually manufactured the myth of critical election theory as teaching people to hate white people, to hate their government, to hate their society. In fact, critical race theory is just the opposite. It suggests that it's not racism, it's not white people, being racist. It is rather that in the structure of our society, a racial discrimination is built in, and that is the overwhelming consensus of recent scholarship. If you look at scholarship on healthcare, on education, on housing, on employment, you can see all the ways in which discrimination is built into our law and practice. And those who actually correctly talk about critical race theory note that policies to rectify this discrimination benefits everybody. If you improve the education system, you benefit.
Oh no, the Zoom went out. Sorry, everybody. I'm going to work on getting him back on. We ran out of our time on the Zoom, unfortunately. Well, it's just me for now, but I will get him back. I promise you. Yeah. But you can ask me a question if you want. I don't know if anybody's interested in anything I have to say, but while I work on getting him back, I can entertain the people. I'm an entertainer. I know what I'm doing. Okay. My dad is calling. Hey, I'm gonna have to send you a new link. We ran out of time on that link.
You're gonna send it to mom's computer?
Yeah, it says I have to wait 9 minutes to start a new one.
Is it worthwhile? It's after 10.
Well.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah, we should.
At least to say goodbye. Which email are you sending it to? Here's mom.
Hey, mom. Actually, can you send me a Zoom link invitation because I can't redo one until for another 9 minutes. No. Dad, can you? Sorry, folks. Hold on 1 minute. We're trying to figure it out. My Zoom won't take me for another 9 minutes, so hold on. Hey, can you hear me? Can you send me a Zoom link because I can't create a new meeting for another 9 minutes. Zoom is blocking me. I'll tell you what. I'll bring him back on the phone. People can hear him through the phone for a little bit. We can ask the last few questions. I don't hear anything. Okay. No, just do a regular call. It's fine. We're already on the phone. He said, "You're gonna call me." All right, hold on. All right, you're on the air, Dad.
Okay.
Can people hear him? Give me a thumbs up in the chat if you can hear him. Say something, Dad.
Hey, thrilled to be back with you, maybe.
Okay, they can hear you. All right.
Awesome.
Sorry for this, guys. Let me try to answer the last few questions. What is your view on Trump's name returning to the Colorado and Maine ballot, even though Trump's name was previously removed due to the 14th Amendment?
You got to understand, the 14th Amendment doesn't say you can't be on the ballot. 14th Amendment says you can't serve. That means that does imply you can't be on the ballot, but it's an absolute bar of getting reelected.
An absolute bar, eh?
An absolute bar, and crystal clear.
Adam Marone says, "Hey there, Mr. Lichtman. I just wanted to ask you two things. What will happen to Trump, and do you predict he will be elected in 2024?" Adam, we don't have an answer to that right now, buddy. I'm sorry. Patrick Murray.
We will give you an answer eventually.
Patrick Murray asks, "What happens if Trump pulls out of NATO and the UN?"
I think it would be a disaster for the world. You know, we've seen this movie before. You know, Trump is not the first America First movement. It was an America First movement prior to Pearl Harbor, which says the United States should not do anything to aid the Allies fighting the Nazis. We could still thrive. Mr. Republican, Robert Taft, the senator from Ohio and son of the president, said this. And of course, if Hitler had taken over Europe, many more Jews would have been killed, and he would have been in a great position, unfortunately, to subvert and undermine American democracy. So that was a completely false and dangerous position. And, you know, if Trump pulls us out of the UN and pulls us out of NATO and lets the dictators come to control Asia and Europe, then, you know, that'll be another way in which millions, maybe even billions more people will be oppressed, and a situation in which American democracy would be hanging on the most fragile of all threads. You know, the irony of the America First position is that it is the worst possible position for American security and survival.
Stein and West are still a strong threat in your view? Question mark.
I'm sorry, what was that question?
Stein and West, the third-party candidates, Jill Stein and Cornel West, are they still a strong threat in your view?
It doesn't seem that way, but it's too early to make the assessment. The third-party candidate who seems to be polling high enough to turn the key is not either one of those, but RFK Jr.
We have someone spamming Greek flags in the chat. Not sure why.
Not sure.
We love you, Greece. Thank you for spamming in our chat.
I've been to Greece. I loved it.
Let's see. Why isn't 1865 included in your key system? I heard that Buchanan would have lost 7 keys.
Are you talking about 1856?
That's what I said.
Oh. I start the keys in 1860 because that is the first election of Republicans versus Democrats of the modern political system. Before that, even in 1856, you didn't have a clear two-party system because the Whigs had already shattered, and there was no clear second party as an alternative to the Democrats. The nativist American Party and the Republican Party were still vying for supremacy at that time. Moreover, the further you go back into the 19th century, the less reliable the statistics become. So I think it was quite sufficient to go back all the way to 1860.
All right, Dad. Why don't you wrap up? What's your final word to the people?
My final word to the people is: don't become desensitized to Trump's scandals. Multiple scandals matter. Each scandal matters, and it shouldn't be dismissed simply because there are so many burdens upon Trump. And, none of it is due to his political opponents. These are all things that Trump caused himself by his own actions. He pocketed foreign money, not his political opponents.
All right. Thank you, Dad. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
All right. Sorry about that, everybody. I keep running into technical issues. I think I solved them, and then somehow they pop back in. Somebody mentioned that we should use Teams. That's a good idea. I had been using what was it called? Google Meet, but it was causing an echo. I don't know why it was causing an echo, but every once in a while it was causing an echo. So maybe Teams is the solution. I'm going to try that next time. Zoom works really well, but the issue is that they kick us off in like 20 minutes. Discord, that's a good idea too. I don't know. It might be hard to get him set up on Discord. He has like no technical savvy at all. But maybe I'll try Discord. Maybe I'll try it. I don't know. Now it's just me for real. He's SteamYard. Okay, well, people still liked it. Skype. Yeah, I thought Skype sucked. I thought Skype was out. No? I thought Skype was of the dinosaurs. Mike, thanks for the super chat, but he's gone, man. What's my favorite film of 2023, Matt Sheridan? Probably The Holdovers. I really liked that. I thought it was a pretty bad year for movies overall. I thought Barbie and Oppenheimer were solid films. I thought Killers of the Flower Moon was a solid film, but there was nothing that like blew me away. But Holdovers was the best of what I've seen. Cisco WebEx, yeah, I know a lot of CNN, a lot of media outlets use Cisco WebEx. Maybe I will try that. Yeah, Alexander Payne is awesome. I'm glad you liked it, Matt. Non-binaries didn't like Barbie. I hear that. That makes sense. Can I predict future elections for my dad? Here's my issue is I have no expertise in any of what would be needed to call elections. I don't have a political science degree. I don't have a history degree. I don't have a statistics degree. I'm a communications guy. So I don't know. It would be hard for me to do that. I'm not exactly sure how that would work. I work in communications now. My ultimate goal is to work in film. So I don't know. Jack wants to know if you can get his book in Canada. I'm not sure. That's a good question. I'll ask him. Barbie was a cornball Disney level movie. No, I thought it was better than that. But Oppenheimer was well done. Yeah, that's the thing about Oppenheimer. It was extremely well done. Like extremely well done. What was my major in undergrad? I was a communications major. I was in the School of Communications at American University where my dad teaches. Because, well, I'm not going to say why, but yes. I went to American, yes. Cooper wants to know who will be the keeper of the keys. That's a good question. Maybe you, Cooper. You know what I mean? I don't think it's going to be me. Again, my background, my expertise doesn't really fit into the category of continuing the keys. So I don't know. I had the genetics. Okay. I had the last name, that's for sure. Let's see. I'll keep going as long as people are watching. Let's see. What's my favorite movie ever? That's a hard one. I don't know if I have a favorite movie ever. It changes with time and with age and with, all that jazz. My favorite director probably ever is a director called Yasuhiro Ozu. He's a Japanese director from his career spanned a long time, but his main reign was like 50s, 60s. I really love his films. And if you haven't seen them, they're very charming. They're a little dated, but by the end, I'm sure you'll all love them. Can I visit Canada someday? I've been to Canada many times. I've been to Montreal. I've been to Mount Tremblant. I've been to Ottawa. I've been to Toronto. I just need to go to Vancouver, but now I'm on the West Coast, so I can go. Dijon Darien, $19. I don't know if that was for me or what. Am I a registered Democrat? Who was your pick in the recent primary seasons? I don't know if I want to say what I am. I like being a little bit anonymous in this. No, not. I like to be a little bit anonymous in this forum. Let my dad sort of take the reins, and I don't know. I do care about politics. I do have a political interest, but I also hate politics and don't work in it at all. So I kind of want to keep my official leanings out of it. No, not Yasuhiro. Yashehero, like spelled like Yasjiro, Yasuhiro in a Japanese way. Ross says, I think I could learn about U.S. history in the Keys well. Well, you seem like a smart person and well educated. I appreciate that. I could, again, I just don't know if it's, I could learn it. I don't know if it's something, again, I have other pursuits that I want to do, so I'm not sure how the Keys would fit into that. Matt Sheridan says he likes Fassbender. I like him too. I like, what is it? Fear Ali Eats the Soul or something like that. What's my favorite restaurant in LA? Well, I've just been here for a month. So far it's Robata Jinya, which is like a sort of new age Japanese restaurant on 3rd Avenue in West Hollywood. That's my favorite. Who is my least favorite senator ever or right now? I mean, you gotta hate Ted Cruz. He's such a slime ball. You know what I mean? And he's such a two-faced mofo. You know what I'm saying? Did I like Canada? Yes, I like Canada a lot. Who's my favorite actor? My favorite actor is Michael Fassbender. Speaking of Fassbender, not the director Fassbender, but Michael Fassbender, the actor. Shawshank Redemption is an awesome movie. That is true. I love Shawshank. That's a classic. Who's my favorite Congress member? That's a good question. Who's my favorite Congress member? Probably Bernie, honestly. Like, just on a personal level, not even in politics. I just like him. He's a likable guy. Hold on to my privacy, my mom says. Barry Smith wants to know, what's your favorite musical artist? Again, all time? That's kind of a hard answer. Right now, I've been sort of into like more indie rock. I like this album by this artist called Blonde Shell, and actually I think she ended up on one of her songs ended up on Obama's list this year. I really like her album. Sam, what do you take? You have good hair. I'm gonna be honest with you, Jack Davis. I don't take nothing for this. I just wash it. Not even conditioner. I just wash it. But I don't wash it every day. That's the key. If you overwash your hair can get damaged. So like wash it like every other day is much healthier for your hair, in my opinion. I did not see Godzilla -1, but I've heard good things about it. I would like to see it. Pulp Fiction and Shawshank are both better films than Forrest Gump, and Gump won Best Picture. Rigged. Yeah, but Forrest Gump was like made to win Best Picture. Pulp Fiction wasn't. Shawshank Redemption is also sort of made to win Best Picture, but I can see why Forrest Gump made it over, because I guess it's a little bit more family friendly, a little bit more of a general, wider audience than Shawshank, but maybe I'm wrong about that. How did I end up in LA? The job I'm currently at had a West Coast position open, and so they offered it to me, and I took it since I want to, work in film. So I thought that would be a good move. Why? So why do Texans vote for Cruz? I'll tell you why, Jim Blowers. Incumbency. And at first, I think Cruz was a decent candidate. He's super well spoken. When he gets out on the campaign trail, he really makes his points well. I think in terms of his ideology, it fits with Texas pretty well. I think a lot of Texans don't want him. He just keeps winning because he's the incumbent. Let's see. Terry Green said they've been following Key since 91. Wow, that's pretty good, Terry. Benedict Cumberbatch is Linda's favorite actor, and Jimmy Stewart too. Jimmy Stewart can't go wrong with Jimmy Stewart. Do I like Angus King? It's weird. I don't know much about Angus King. I feel like when I see him, he's always pretty good. But I don't know much about him. Ross says, I lived in Southern California most of my life. The Asian and seafood restaurants in California are some of the best in the state. Yeah, so far, I agree with that. Totally. Who's my favorite governor and least favorite governor right now? That's a good question, too. My favorite governor right now? I like the governor of my home state of Maryland. He seems like a good and up-and-coming guy. I'm blanking on his name right now. What is his name? Hey Siri, who's the governor of Maryland? Wes Moore, of course. I don't know why I was blanking on his name. My least favorite, probably Kristen Noem in was she, North or South Dakota? She's kind of annoying. Are people still listening? Are people still watching me? Or should I just go? I don't know. Yes, Wes Moore. Yes, thank you. Yeah, that is true. Mike DeWine has been pretty good. Oh yeah, Greg Abbott. Yeah, Greg Abbott is the worst. His handling of immigrants is just so despicable. Like, I understand you want to secure the border, but come on. You know what I mean? Come on. Do I use Apple Music, Spotify, or Amazon? I use Spotify. And I think anybody who uses anything else is crazy. Come on. Crazy. Spotify is the most user-friendly. It's the best by far, in my opinion. I swear, you look up things on Apple Music, you can't even find the artist. What is my favorite series of all time? So, like, I'm a huge Portlandia fan. I'm a huge Breaking Bad and Sopranos fan. Actually, probably my favorite series ever is Mad Men. I really love Mad Men. I think that's a fantastic series. And I think we're just going to get more and more series as streaming takes over more. Unfortunately, movies might be going to the wayside. I mean, they're not going to die, but I don't know. They might be gone. So am I going to live in LA permanently? Yeah, I mean, I moved here. This is my home now. Yes, I'm very excited for GTA 6. I've been playing GTA forever, and 6 looks awesome. All right, if anybody has any more. Which newspapers do I read each morning? So I don't read newspapers because I'm a millennial, okay? But I have a digital subscription to the Washington Post, so that's the one I'm always on, just because, I want to get my news from a reputable source. I believe, like, you pay for it, you're going to get you're going to get better journalism. So I mostly just stick to Washington Post because that's what I have the digital subscription to. And that's what I mostly stick to. Breaking Bad is a masterpiece. Yeah, it is. It really is. Linda Fusco loves Mad Men and the Kaminsky Message. I've never seen that. Favorite video game of all time is Red Dead Redemption 2. How old am I? I'm 31. Oh, how about Red Dead Redemption 2? Yeah, that's my favorite video game of all time. AMC movie theaters is hurting. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Streaming is taking over, there's no doubt. Movie theaters will be around. They're not going to disappear, but they've already and are going to continue to take massive hits. And the issue with streaming is that streaming doesn't really lend itself to a movie. At least the business model doesn't, because Netflix, Amazon Prime, they want you coming back year after year. So a series like Stranger Things, which runs for like 8 years, is going to make you continue to come back and back and back, while a movie is 2 hours and then you're done. And there's no reason for you to come back. Now, there's something to be said that, like, if Netflix starts curating really great movies, you'll buy your subscription because you know that Netflix is producing really great movies, but they don't have the same pull as series do, which is worrying because, I don't know, I prefer movies for me, so. Ross says, I want to subscribe to the Washington Post when I have enough money to afford it. I hear that. Actually, I get it through my job, so that's huge. Yeah. News Nation for unbiased coverage. I haven't really checked out News Nation very much. I don't know anything about it. What's console do I have? I got a Xbox and a Switch. Ross Goldberg's birthday is in 2 days. Happy birthday, Ross. I haven't played Portal 2. Do I invest in the stock market? I really don't. I've tried to dabble in it a little bit, but I kind of subscribe to the theory that monkeys throwing darts at a wall can pick stocks just as good as anybody else. So I kind of don't think it's worth it. I think if you want to invest your money, invest it in more broad things like mutual funds and things like that. That's just me. There are certain stock heads out there who might swear by it, but I don't. LA Times is very good. Yeah, I really like the LA Times. Again, I don't pay for it, so I don't really get much of their coverage. Sam, will you follow the Canada general election if it's held in 2024? Yeah, we'll probably mention it. Probably won't go into super great detail because, my dad's a American political historian, but who's your favorite and least favorite columnist, journalist at the Washington Post, Sam? That's a good question. I honestly don't really look at who's writing. Maybe that makes me a little bit of a dummy, but I don't really know, honestly. Sorry, Mike. Addie says, I love the Nintendo Switch. Root, what's your favorite Nintendo video game, and do you like all the Zelda games? Actually, if Red Dead Redemption isn't my favorite, right next to it is both the two newest Zelda games, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Man, those games are beautiful. They're masterpieces. What about local newspapers? How many are left? You know what I mean? Back in my hometown, we used to have like the Gazette, but I don't even think that exists anymore. I mean, if you know of good local papers, let me know. I know in DC, they have in LA, they have like the LAist and DCist, which is pretty good, which is like NPR. I also get a lot of my news from NPR because their app is free, and I listen to NPR almost every day. What are my thoughts on Mark Robinson running for governor? I don't even know who that is. I'm going to be honest with you. Sam, are you excited for the NFL playoffs? Go Ravens. Yes, I'm so excited for the NFL playoffs. I'm a Ravens fan, if you don't know. I'm hoping for all the way this year. I'm not going to lie. I'm hoping for it. Will it happen? I don't know. We'll see, but I'm hoping for it. Ross says, my dad has been a very successful online trader with stocks. He's followed the very disciplined, very rational, very pragmatic long-term strategy that he learned from Warren Buffett. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You have to put in a lot of time and energy to really do something in stocks, in my opinion. And I just don't have the time or energy to do it. So I just kind of don't do it. Do I have a sibling? Yeah, so I have a older half sister from my dad's first marriage. We have different moms, but the same father. Yeah, I know the Ravens are favored to win the Super Bowl, but Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, kind of a moot point, right? Jamie Smith says, Ross, I don't trust Warren Buffett. He predicted a Hillary Clinton win in 2016. Well, so did a lot of people. So if that's your gauge of trust, you're going to have to distrust a lot of people. Why does my dad drink a lot of soft drinks? That's such a good question. I've asked him that. I think it's generational to some extent. Like his generation is just obsessed with sodas. I've asked him like, why? Because I don't drink soda at all, basically. I like LaCroix. That's really, other than water, that's really all I drink. I think it's a generational thing. I think people of his generation just got hooked on Coke. And then when the in the 80s, when the health crazes started coming along and Diet Coke started coming along, they just switched because they thought it was healthier. Do I like Kristen Cinema? No, not at all, really. I think she's a fake moderate. I think she's, policy-wise, I don't agree with her much at all. Have you ever tried doing Ancestry says 23andMe? Yes, I have. So my dad is like 99.9% Jewish, and my mom is mostly Swiss, Swedish, and from the UK. Why should he drink Dr. Pepper tomorrow, Linda? Why? Have I been told I look exactly like my mom? Yes, everybody tells me I look like my mom. Do I play Wordle? Yes, I do play Wordle, but I've kind of fallen off of it. I don't play it super often anymore. What do I like about Canada? Canada just has a really good vibe. The people there are very nice. It's very chill. It's like America, but without kind of like a lot of the bad things, like less crime, less gunfight. You know what I mean? The issue is it's fucking cold. It's so cold. Dr. Pepper keeps you regular? I did not know that. I had no idea that was a thing. Is that real or is that pseudoscience? Had no idea. All right. I think with that, I'm going to sign off. I had no idea I was going to keep going like this, but it was fun to chat with you guys. If there's any other burning questions, I'll wait for another second or two, but I think I'm about to sign off. I'm about to move into my new apartment. Well, I've moved in a bunch of it. I'm still at an Airbnb right now here in LA, but finally got moving on my own apartment, which is nice. Did I ever have a bar mitzvah? No, I did not. Am I Jewish? That's a complicated question. I mean, I'm not very religious, but my father is Jewish, so what does that mean, right? I don't know. All right. Thank you guys. Have a good night. Take care.